In the heart of a valley wrapped in mist and mystery lay a quiet little village named Elmswood. Surrounded by hills and shaded by tall trees, it was a place of soft winds and slow days. The villagers lived peacefully, growing vegetables, caring for animals, and watching the seasons pass like pages in a calm book. At the center of Elmswood stood an old clock tower with a bell at its peak. The bell was large, made of dark bronze, with vines carved around its edges. Once upon a time, this bell rang every morning and evening, marking the beginning and end of each day. It had a deep, echoing tone that reminded the villagers they were never alone. But one day, many years ago, the bell stopped ringing. No one knew exactly why. Some said it broke. Others whispered that it had been silenced on purpose. A few believed it had a spirit and simply chose to stop. Over time, the villagers grew used to the silence. Children played without hearing its chime. Farmers harvested without its signal. And slowly, the memory of its sound faded like a forgotten lullaby. Only the elders remembered it clearly, and they missed it. Mira was 12 years old. She had a curious mind and ears that heard everything. Her grandmother often said, "Mira, you were born to listen." Unlike other children who liked to run and shout, Mira liked to sit and hear. She heard the birds' secret conversations in the trees. She noticed the way the wind changed its tune before rain. Even the soft rustle of pages in the village library felt like music to her. One quiet afternoon, Mira sat under the clock tower, her sketchbook in her lap. She looked up at the bell and sighed. "Why don't you sing any more?" she whispered. To her surprise, she thought she heard something, a faint hum, or maybe an echo. Her eyes widened. Was it her imagination? She decided then and there to find out the truth. Mira's grandmother, Willow, was one of the oldest people in Elmswood. She had silver hair and eyes like calm water. She remembered the bell well. "Grandma," Mira asked that evening, "why did the bell stop?" Willow paused. She looked out the window, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea. "The last time it rang, there was a storm," she said, "a strong one. Lightning hit the tower. Some say the bell cracked. Others say something changed. Changed how? Well, some of us felt different after. Like something in the village shifted. People became quieter, less open, as if the silence of the bell spread to our hearts." Mira listened carefully. "Do you think it can ring again?" "I don't know," said Willow. "But maybe someone who truly listens could help it find its voice again." Mira knew then that she would try. Early the next morning, Mira packed a small bag, a notebook, a flashlight, some bread, and her recorder. She wanted to record the bell if it made even a whisper. She went to the base of the clock tower. Ivy covered the stone walls, and the old wooden door groaned as she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and time. A spiral staircase led upward into the shadowy tower. Mira took a breath and began to climb. With every step, the floor creaked. She saw old gears, broken pulleys, and spider webs stretched like forgotten curtains. Light filtered through narrow windows, casting long, narrow beams. At last, she reached the top. The bell stood before her silent and still. It was cracked, but not broken. Near the base of the bell, Mira saw something wedged between two wooden beams. Carefully, she pulled it out. It was a folded piece of parchment, yellow with age. She opened it. Inside was a message. To the one who listens, the bell has not fallen silent by force, but by choice. It hears the village no longer singing. It echoes only what it receives. Mira blinked. It was like a riddle or a poem. She thought hard. If the bell echoes what it receives, maybe it needs to hear something first. She sat near the bell and did what she did best. She listened. The wind howled louder that night as Daniel and Leela approached the back of the old school building. The moonlight barely lit their path as they crept toward the locked iron gate that led to the bell tower. Leela had brought an old journal she found hidden in the school's library. This belonged to the first headmaster. She whispered, "Look." Inside were handwritten pages about the school's founding, mysterious noises, and a bell that rang on its own during times of emotional distress. One line stood out: "When the soul cries, the bell answers." Daniel felt a chill. It's like the school is alive. They reached the gate. It was locked tight, but Leela pulled out a rusted key she had found behind the old portrait of Headmaster Thorne. The gate creaked open. They climbed narrow stairs to the tower. Dust and cobwebs choked the air. The silence grew heavy. And then there it was, the bell, old, bronze, and silent. But as they stepped closer, it trembled. The bell didn't just tremble. It shimmered, faintly glowing in the moonlight that filtered through the cracks in the wooden walls. Daniel approached carefully. "Do you feel that?" he asked. The air was thicker, almost like water. A faint sounder whisper swirled around them. It wasn't words exactly. It was emotion, sadness, loneliness. Leela placed a hand on the bell. Her mind was instantly flooded with images. A young boy crying in the corner of a classroom. A girl writing poems no one ever read. A teacher dismissed before her time, misunderstood. The bell was a vessel absorbing sorrow over generations. Daniel touched the bell too. "It's not haunted," he said. "It's hurting." Leela nodded. The bell needs someone to listen. They returned the next day, drawn back by the energy in the tower. Leela brought an old school ledger from 1905. "Look at this." She pointed to a name written and scratched out. Clara Everdale. Who was she? No records, no photos, nothing. Just erased. They asked Miss Penrose, the oldest teacher at the school. She went pale. Clara, she was different, brilliant, quiet. Wrote stories, but others bullied her. One day she disappeared. They said she transferred, but no one really knew. Daniel clenched his fists, and no one ever spoke of her again. Miss Penrose looked away. Sometimes we hide things that make us uncomfortable, but silence isn't healing. That evening, Leela stood beneath the bell and read aloud one of Clara's poems found folded between pages in the journal. "I speak in silence, scream in smiles, watch time erase my trials. But though I vanish, I remain, in whispered bells, in falling rain." The bell rang, soft, clear, mournful. It echoed through the halls. Students turned in surprise. Some felt tears rise, others felt warmth. The silence was broken. Daniel stood beside Leela. "We hear you now, Clara." The school changed after that. The bell never rang on its own again, but people began speaking, listening, connecting. The quiet corners grew less lonely ... And each year, a poem was read aloud at assembly. A silent bell, made heard again. Late that evening, as the wind whispered against the panes of her small cottage, Leela sat by the fire with a cup of warm tea in hand. The day had been long and full of emotion, yet something tugged at her thoughts, like a bell waiting to be rung. Yuto paced the quiet corridors beneath the temple, where the ancient scroll had revealed the hidden archives. They were dimly lit by glowing lanterns powered by energy far older than electricity. Every carved wall, every tablet, every whisper of wind seemed to speak of the bell's true purpose. He was not alone. Asami had followed him quietly, refusing to let him carry the burden by himself. "These stories," she said, brushing her fingers across a mural, "they aren't myths. They're warnings. The bell is not just a relic. It's a seal." The mural depicted the village 1,000 years ago. A figure stood before a swirling shadow, the bell hanging above them. Priests were shown chanting, their energy flowing into the bell. At the mural's base, a single word was etched in old script: containment. "It was never meant to be rung again," Yuto whispered. But the bell had been struck, and now something stirred. A deep hum began to echo through the halls. The very walls vibrated. Dust fell from the ceiling. In the archives behind them, scrolls began to unroll themselves, as if the stories were waking. Outside, the village felt it. Children paused their play. The elders emerged from homes and shops. Glancing up the mountain where the shrine bell tower stood, a low, deep tone faint, but pulsing, was spreading across the valley. Back in the archives, a final mural half buried behind a crumbling wall caught Asami's eye. Together, she and Yuto pushed the stones aside to reveal the image. A child, not a priest, stood before the bell. "That's you," she said, "or someone like you, a descendant." The mural showed the child stepping forward as the shadow loomed, light radiating from their chest, the bell glowing in resonance. Yuto's breath caught. A sacrifice or a balance? Asami shook her head. Not a sacrifice, a bridge. By the time they reached the top of the hill, the bell was ringing not with a clapper, but with the vibration of the air itself. Yuto could feel it inside his bones. The village had gathered below. No one spoke. They only watched. He approached the tower, climbing the long spiral steps until he stood beneath the bell. It shimmered now, light bleeding through the engravings. Asami followed, just a step behind. "Do you remember the lullaby your grandmother sang?" she asked suddenly. Yuto nodded. He hadn't thought about it in years. She looked at him, eyes wide. "Sing it." It was ridiculous, but he did. Quietly at first, his voice trembling. But the moment the first note left his mouth, the bell's tone changed. Softer, higher. Each word brought calm. Asami joined him. Then the bell pulsed once more, and a final vibration rang through the valley like a wave. Then silence. The next morning, the bell tower was empty. But the bell remained silent once more. Yuto and Asami sat beneath the banyan tree, staring at the village below. The temple elders had offered answers, but there was so much that could never be explained with words. "It's not over," Asami said, "just dormant." Yuto nodded. "But now we know. Now the stories live again." The bell was silent, but in that silence was a song, a history, a promise, and to young souls who would carry its meaning to the world.